mental block? Who, Prof? What is this?
I mean, did they not finish third the last 3 tournaments,
Okay,
including
there
and
we
the
go.
4 if we include the charity event? But let's not include that. Finishing third consistently, owning group stages, going like 7-0, I think was it in Road to Rio, going into the playoffs, then losing to teams like they shouldn't be losing to. It feels like all the time. They lost to Big Now. They lost to who they lose to? They lost to Vitality, Complexity, like all of these teams that are below them on the rankings, but only when it comes to like the final matches, like the semifinals or like consolidation finals, upper bracket finals, and then they just lose. Even though overall, I mean, even you're on the FaZe hype train, right? Like you would say, you even said as a hater, not a hater, but like you're kind of skeptical of international teams. Like FaZe look overall as the best team currently, even though they just brought in like a 16-year-old kid. They kind of have the polish overall when you look at all of the games. They probably have the highest win rate of like maps or something over the last month or two, but they still didn't win anything. So it's weird.
It's probably Complexity just because they played all those home sweet home cups and won like 4 of them or something.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure FaZe is up there somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you, Device, got a chance to watch a lot of or any of FaZe recently? And what do you make of them at the moment?
I mean, like I've always had kind of the same attitude when we have to play them and looking at them is they have the talent, they have the experience, they just don't have the right mixture. I feel like there needs leadership, and that's probably also a reason why they finished third place. I can have a lot of experience in that. They need leadership to step in and take responsibility at the right time. And then I also think they would be a crazy team to play against if they probably anti-stratted more. I remember some interviews where they were maybe just looking at bots or something like that. There's a lot of more digging into stuff you can do. So I don't really know where the mental block is. I just know that they have a lot of things to work with, right? They have a lot of different paths they can go. If it's the psychological part, if it's the anti-stratting, if it's leadership. As you said, they added a 16-year-old guy who is really good. I think Brogy is really, really, really good. They're picking up a lot of good talent, but everyone has always been saying the same thing, like why not bring an amazing in-game leader? They had Kerrigan, he's an amazing in-game leader. They won a lot of tournaments. They didn't win the major, which I think if they would have won that, he would maybe still have been playing with them. But it's for sure an interesting way to go if they would go that way in the future. There's a lot of good leaders out there.
Here's one thing that I want to ask you specifically, because FaZe are kind of a special team in that their opera is nowhere near like a classic opera that you see in any other team. You know, that's kind of used for the entry fragging and trying to get you an advantage and play the angles and stuff like that. Roke is much more passive, much more supportive. You know, doesn't really go for entry frags. That's very much on Rain and Nico. So, what do you think about that philosophy in general? Obviously, that's not something that you've played it as just because you've always been the opera who's been going for the entry kills and have been very good at it. So how do you see that?
It's an interesting take on how to play different maps. I think that on Nuke he plays a similar style. As Simple does, he always go to heaven. He always throws nades towards the outside position. He's sometimes, of course, he's positioning himself down secret and stuff like that. But he is playing, as you're saying, a supportive role, and I think it could work. But as I said, like statistically, the AWP has a better chance at landing an opening kill. It's just how it is that you have to land one shot. So in my opinion, like you've seen the rise of Maka, who is a guy that just runs around with AWP. Farley, a guy that recently signed with Godsend, AWP that just runs around, because if you don't know where the AWP is, then if you just walk into the wrong angle, you're dead, right? So there's two different ways to play it. I just think that FaZe have also a lot of good entry fraggers, so their play style is unique and is working for them. And I don't think talent is the right way. They've tried it at least, right? I think that if they got a really good leader, I don't know how comfortable Nico is with leading, but he has the experience now, right? So it might as well work out. But there's a lot of good in-game leaders that would be really annoying to play against that talent, and then mixtured with sort of like how G2 have done it. Like they have a really good system and they play amazing CS and are amazing individualists.
I know you're kind of working against yourself, but who would you propose for FaZe to in-game lead?
Oh, that's tough. It's so hard because I think there's a lot of personality that has to be weighed in. Like you really gotta be, I think not strict, but like you really need to
You have
believe
to
in
have
yourself,
authority.
to have authority and balls to just like, because you're gonna play with some high-profile names like Cole, Nico. Those guys have won everything there is to win, or almost. Nico is gonna get there one day for sure. So yeah, one guy that just has a good understanding of the game, how to develop the meta, and then of course the authority. It's hard for me to say because I haven't played with that many in-game leaders. I think that Kerrigan was really good for them, but of course that didn't work out. So they'll just have to test out.
I wanted to touch on something because you mentioned Farley and you mentioned Maka. It sounded like you watched them play, or either personally watching the demos, or maybe someone prepared some clips for you or something like that. Like, how much insight do you have into these like up and coming lower tier offers that pop up? Like, do you, like when Maka was popping off, just like first time stepping into these like tier 1 events but online, were you going and watching his demo, seeing how he plays? Like, what is the approach to like learning new stuff from new players?
So actually, we were playing against Heretics and we were preparing on the maps we're gonna pick and the map we expected them to pick. And I was just thinking to myself, this guy's a crazy good AWPer, and he had the philosophy I played with back in 2018, where I was running a lot more around with AWP. I think that going into 19 and playing that year, I tried to remain more stationary because people were expecting me to, let's say if I take a kill down mid in Inferno, I would rotate to B, and same if I go B, I would rotate to A. So like people are starting to figure it out. But then I kind of realized that with this online play, like these AWPers that are just running around and taking crazy duels, like if you're hitting your shot, you're basically winning the rounds for the team. And watching the demos of how Heretics play around that on the CT side, just I wanted to see more, so I just watched a bunch of his demos on the different maps, and Farley has just been putting up like statistically good numbers. So I was like, okay, let's see, is he just being played around, or is he actually like a crazy good AWPer? And in my opinion, he's also a big name to probably becoming a good player in the scene.
That makes us feel pretty happy over here at the HLTV Confirmed.
Sponge, I want to say something before. I just had read a comment in the chat.
Yeah.
Everyone remembers how everyone wanted Alexi B to join FaZe when Ents benched him, right? That was like a thing, like that was gonna fix FaZe. And then I did an interview with Nico, and he said like they heard that he's not the right player for them. And then everyone said like, ego Nico, blah blah, stuff like that. But now look at the OG, a team where you have like a lot less established players than in FaZe. And Alexi B is just like, judging by the comms and TeamSpeak and stuff that we saw, like Alexi B is having trouble controlling that team. Imagine that in FaZe, then it would be like, it probably is true that he wasn't the guy for FaZe, right?
You have to do a lot of screening. I think that's I think, as you say, that team is probably one of the hardest teams to find an in-game leader for, and that's just on assumptions, right? It could probably be for some guys a team that's easy to lead, especially when like you're winning. But when things start to get tough, you need to be able to speak about the things that some players don't want to speak about, which is repetitive mistakes and stuff like that. And especially repetitive mistakes and habits you have when things are going bad in an official game. If you're taking the same duels you're taking when you're having a good game as when you're having a bad game, like it's easy to fix, but if you've never really like touched on the issue, it would be hard to fix it.
Okay, well, I guess Alexi, still in terms of his career, is still pretty young, right? When you think about how Ents, Meteoric Rise, and all those bits, and he's a bit of a younger guy as well than the other ones. So, look, I think the FaZe in-game leader question mark is one that I'm sure the FaZe camp has thought about for a very long time. I wish in-game leaders grew on trees. I think it would make everybody's life a little bit easier. But I want to get into a topic ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, all my friends out there, everybody, that made me very, very, very angry earlier in the week. The most angry I think I've been until, yeah. So I want to attempt to objectively talk about this. I had planned to do a bit of a revelation of let's take a look at past grievances that these people have done, airing all the way back to 2015. However, I spoke to my lovely parents and they said, "What's the point, Chad?" And they're right. What the fuck is the point? So let's just talk about what happened and let's talk about what should happen. MIBR versus FURIA. Now, obviously, there is a lot on the line. And obviously, there is a very, very large fan base that supports one of those teams a lot more than they do the other. Now, if you missed this, if you didn't catch this, if you didn't see this, I don't blame you. It was late at night. That's fine. Maybe you didn't
Device
read it.
as well.
Okay.
Hard to not catch the aftermath, though.
So
I honestly haven't seen this, so I'm excited.
Okay.
now I don't want to taint anybody here. So if I start to get a little bit biased in what I'm saying, Prof or Striker, I would like one of you to take over here because I like I said, I obviously feel very, very strongly about this situation. Now, there was a match between the two teams, and FURIA are in Florida and MIBR are in LA. Now, there was something to do with the servers, the whatever. Now, fuck it, we'll go in order. So there was an issue in the server. They were playing Inferno. There was apparently lagging coming out from the side of MIBR. They wanted to change server, but it probably wasn't a server issue if they were the only ones lagging. I'm not certain. But if only one team's lagging, then it's their internet connection to the server, not the server for everybody. And there was an issue in a round, and it was very close. I believe the scoreline was like 12-12 or 12-13. I don't even. It was on the first map, and Arts pushed up Banana with the AWP, and I believe Fur had the better spawn. So Fur had taken the AWP from Fallen, and he was crouching, peeking to take the line at the half wall, to the T coming up to the half wall, and Art kills Fur. Now, what ensued after this was them going onto the B bomb site. The camera angle quickly changed to Fallen, who had frozen or had stopped. And at that point, that is when I do believe that they called not live. Now, the question about them lagging, that's not a question. They were obviously lagging. The question about the rules traditionally state, because everybody's basically copied ESL's rule book, that if damage has been done, that there will not be a restart. Now, obviously, guys, when we take into consideration the footage and everything that came out afterwards, and in that regard, I think everybody would be more than happy for there to have been a restart. But it is the issue of how we got there. So FURIA continued to play out the round because they were playing as by the book. And this is what we should all do. For all of you out there, no matter what level of competition that you are playing to, play until the fucking whistle. You can only control what you can control. You are not in control of any bullshit that's going on with the PC crash, with the internet, with any of that stuff. That is out of your hands. Does it suck? Yeah, it fucking sucks. But play to the whistle, and then we'll have a discussion. So what happened after that? The game stopped. The question came in about having it restarted within the text. You guys can go and check all the logs if you would like. It's been translated, I believe.
Yeah, it's in the demo as well, just in Brazilian, like Portuguese.
And Art has said something along the lines of to let Gary, the coach, and Dead work it out. Now, after that, it didn't really seem that heated, in terms of the text that was coming through. But the sentiment that then followed after that was that by FURIA players leaving it to the coach, which personally I think is the correct decision. I don't think players should have any say in those kind of scenarios. They should leave it to the admin and their coaches or management to work out this stuff. You're only playing the game. You're only playing the game. Now, what happened was they were having the discussion, and there was a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. But during this, because we're in an online environment, a video from Fallen with his hundreds of thousands of followers was put online during the conversation. Now,
this is one of the benefits of the online era. You can just during a technical break, just tweet a video for everyone to just like go on your side. That could not happen on LAN, so good shit, I think, overall.
Yeah. So now, when that conversation is going on, now I'm going to go away right now, guys, from the story. I want everybody to be quite clear on this. I want you to come on a fucking journey with me, right? And I'm very sorry that I'm going to upset a lot of Brazilian fans here. I don't want to upset you. I'm not speaking out against your team. I'm not trying to upset the apple cart here. I am just genuinely telling you what this would make me feel. Now, earlier in the show, we were talking about what Fallen has done for his scene. And there is no doubt about what he has created and what he has done. He is a legend for what he has been able to accomplish as a player, as a person, and all those kind of bits and pieces. But for 1 second, let's consider if we're Art or Quesarado or Yuri or any of these kids who looked up to what Fallen and Coldzera and all these guys, fuck, I'm getting emotional, would have looked up to them as legends, right? As people who curated a scene, who have achieved so much, like respected them and loved them and looked at them like they were their idols. And then they turn on them in obviously a game that is very, very important, and they put them on blast on social media in front of hundreds of thousands of people who we know they're a very passionate fan base, right? We know that they're a very passionate fan base, and I love that. But they direct so much anger and what it was for those kids, right? Like those kids, could you imagine like how fucking horrible that must feel to be in the middle of a game, right? And have that turned on you, right? These people that you once fucking respected the shit out of turning on you in the middle of a game that it's your fucking job, right? And then after the aftermath of all of this, like the tweets that came out, like Fur calling them shit. I don't think he's calling them shit players. I think what he was trying to insinuate was they were shit people for not. The take I took from the MIBR account was they didn't think that FURIA were being men and that they were being fair play. But this is a job with hundreds of thousands of dollars on the line, and they're trying to be professional about this, right? Leave it up to the admins. Leave it up to your coach. Like, this shouldn't be a conversation of, hey, let's of course there should have been a restart. Of course there should have been. But this is in the middle of the game. And these kids, I could see how frustrated they were after it. They were all losing it. They were all losing it after. They didn't want to be in the server anymore, right? They didn't want to be there playing anymore. And it really fucking got to me, man, because I don't understand, like, how they can do that and then not apologize. They didn't apologize. They did like some comments and stuff, but I don't know, man. I'm losing it. Someone take over. Fuck.
Yeah, I mean, like the gist of MIBR's response to everything was just like that it was an insult that FURIA even like didn't instantly just restart the round, even though, let's even put aside everything about the rules and that FURIA shouldn't even be asked about what they think about the restart. It's just like rules, admin decision, and information from both teams. It's not like your opinion as a team, like, do you want to restart or not? And MIBR somehow took that as an insult because of their tenure, their history, trophies won, and all of that stuff. Like, if we say something, we'd never lie. Everything we say is always 100% true. Like, that is number one. It's not true. Like, that is kind of bullshit, because MIBR and SK, Luminosity, and those guys, they also had a lot of controversy, especially like even tied directly to like match restarts, to round restarts back to that was what was the RGN back when with Hiko. A lot of drama came from that.
That's true.
And then Hiko had to go like get bodyguards to go to Brazil and all of that stuff. So like that, what happened to Hiko there was the same thing more or less that happened to FURIA now, even though FURIA wanted to restart. So the thing is, like, they even said, yeah, okay, we'll restart, but they still ended up being like, I don't know, like being the bad guys in the whole story, even though all that they did is just like paused, examined the evidence, said like, oh yeah, this is fine, and that's it. Like, it's just like a very bad, I don't know. I don't know why we need to have this this is not banter. This is not like fun. It's just bullshit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine playing football and then the judge goes, "Do you think this is a yellow card or a red card?" Like it's.
Yeah,
But,
and then
the other team has to agree afterwards. Like, oh, you showed the red card.
And then
Okay.
Messi's like, it's like, this guy actually said it was a red card, and it's like, it's me, Messi. Like, why would I ever do like a red card off offense? I would never do that. He thinks I'm that bad. It's obviously not intentional. It's like, it just opens like a whole can of worms that shouldn't even be there. And like Fallen tweeting that out in the middle of everything, it's like, what is the only purpose of tweeting something like that out and not sharing it like between you is to get like the public on your side. And then why do you need that? Like, you really don't need that.
If you have everything, like if everything was correct, and as it, like, if I understand correctly, like afterwards everything was supposed to be restarted because they lagged out beforehand, then there's no need to actually go on social media. And as Chad also says, like, it's really important that the tournament organizers step up, because we've been in these situations crazy amounts of times, and every time I'm just like, okay, why do we?
It always ends one way too. It's just like it never ends well when the players are involved in any sort of decision or like a controversy on the server. It's just never ends well.
I mean, like the one that's always coming to my head is when Valve gathered all the teams at PGL Krakow and asked, "Do you want to play with a jump bug where a person is invisible when he's jumping?" And like I don't even know what to say. It's just crazy, right? And this situation is crazy, and getting people like, as you said, Brazilians especially are people that are really passionate about their team. So of course, if you can get the fans on your side, then it's gonna affect the judges. It's the same way if a judge in football is coaching a home game for a team, and they are booing every time he's making a decision, which is maybe not bad, but in the end, like, it will skewer his point of view a little bit, maybe a few percentages. And if the player complains enough times, it says this is a yellow and this is a yellow, or fakes when he's getting tackled and stuff, like, you can like get some percentages there. But in CS it should be so easy to write rules, what is right, what is wrong. There is like no reason to complain to admins if like people are not cheating, and people are not cheating. So like it's such a simple situation, it's such a simple fix. I just can't understand how it can still be a problem.
Yeah, I just think the most important thing that we all need to take away from this, right, is what we were talking about earlier to do with competitive integrity, right? Because by influencing people's emotions, right, you are in that fashion, right? In that fashion, that to me kind of takes away from the competitive integrity, right? Because you are whether they were or they weren't, I'm not going to accuse them. I'm not going to say that they knew what was going to happen. That's not up to me to make that call or assumption. But you're either intentionally or unintentionally weaponizing your gargantuan fan base, right?
For sure.
Like, there's no question on whether or not Fallen has done amazing things and those kind of, like, there's no question. There's no question. I used to like love watching them play. Like, I got to play against them. These guys were guys that I was watching demos of and spending hours of my time. And it's like people look up to them like idols. And I think that we need to all be much more responsible with how we use social media as players and as talent and as all these bits and pieces, right? Because it's not. I've now been doing this, right? I was a professional Counter-Strike player back in 2008. Social media wasn't like this. I wish it was. It would have been great for my career back then. But in terms of all these bits and pieces, we've all grown and changed a lot. I'm a 30-year-old man now. Have I done things in my life that I think are dumb? Have I said things that are stupid? Do I regret some of the things in the past? Of course I do. But I learn, and I think that we should all learn, and we should all be stepping in the right direction where we want to do good, right? We should be showing the next generation of people who look up to these players and teams, etc., who idolize them, what the right things to do are, not what the wrong things to do are. And look, it's a different culture. I'm not going to pretend to understand. I won't even pretend to understand for a moment. But it just broke my fucking heart to see that go down there. And look, if everyone's cool, can we move on from this? Because I don't want to dwell on it for too long.
Yeah,
for sure.
Okay. Now, Striker, you're up to the plate, motherfucker.
What's up?
what the hell is happening with these rankings? Lucas, I'm going to
Oh,
send you
that-
the
okay.
link. I'm going to send you the link. We're going to take a look at it because we were talking about this the other
Oh,
week.
jump
I was
on the
expecting such a
pitch.
big response of this. Man.
We were speaking about this last week, obviously with the rankings and stuff, and people at home maybe don't understand what's going on with the rankings necessarily, why certain things jump up and down so much, considering the climate we're in. Are you able to help and shed a little bit of light?
Sure. I mean, just to address the elephant in the room, which is Vitality jumping from 10th place to second, right? Which seems like a massive jump. But when you look at the points, it was only like 150 points difference, which makes kind of sense for placing second at like a big European event. It kind of makes sense that you jump like around the 200 point mark, while the winners are probably going to jump a bunch more. It just seems pretty reasonable to me, right? But because it was from 10th to second, I expected a pretty big response. But the reason it's so close in the first place between like the first and I think 12th team, where it's
Yeah,
like
it's
literally the difference is like
220
200
points.
points, which is, I feel like it's unprecedented. I don't think we've had a situation like this happen before, not to this extreme at least. But basically the reason that happens is because the scene is so unstable. So okay, let me explain it to you like this, right? When Astralis had 1,000 points, which means they maxed out in all of the subcategories, right? That means in every subcategory, the more Astralis win when they already are on top at the 1,000 points maxed out, the more the rest is going to get scaled down. Like their points going to get reduced, even though they didn't have any worse results or they didn't place badly or anything. They're going to get reduced just based off the 1,000 being the max, and the rest has to be scaled accordingly, right? So that's the reason why sometimes Astralis could be at 1,000 points and the second team could be at 300, because Astralis are just so fucking. That was like a point. There was a point where it was like 1,400. Like there was a massive gap between first and second place. And that was because Astralis were so dominant that everybody had to be scaled the fuck down so much to make up the gap that should exist, right?
I
And
think
the
another
opposite is happening
example.
now.
I think another example of like how the ranking works, it's obviously like it's relative to the number one team, or not the number one team, but number one team in these three subcategories, which are form is just like matches win and lost, and then you have recent lands, and then you have achievements. Recent lands like 3 months, achievements like 6 months, and you have those three categories, and then whoever is the best team in that category has the max points, and everyone else is scaled based on how good they are compared to that team. So just to explain it in a simple way, it's like Astralis at one point had 1,000 points and Liquid at one point had 1,000 points. But in peak, Liquid wasn't as good as peak Astralis. And that's why like the second place team after Astralis had like, I don't know, 400 points, and the second place team behind Liquid had, I don't know, 800 or 700 points. So that's kind of the gist of the whole thing. It's like everything is relative to the top. Here we go, Dogo.
Okay. So do you have more you want to divulge on this?
Well,
Striker?
that's basically just to explain why it's so close now, right? Obviously, like we've had so many different winners, and we're regionalized, so that even exaggerates the problem. Well, I'm saying problem, just like the issue at hand, right? I'm not even saying it's necessarily a mistake or anything like that. It's just that certain teams can't even play against each other, so that creates even more like diverse results.
More
like
tournament
different
winners.
teams, yeah, exactly. More tournament winners, like 3 different tournament winners in Europe, 3 different tournament winners in North America, a bunch of difference in the top 4, even like Fnatic just going from tournament win to like bombing out last and stuff like that. Just this massive inconsistency just creates such close points between all those top 12 teams that this is what's going to happen. So that's why these big jumps are going to happen now a little bit more, and that it doesn't necessarily mean that G2 are the best team in the world, because first of all, they're only like 6 points ahead now, and second of all, like next week if they lose like in CS Summit a couple of matches, they're probably going to drop down, you know.
Okay.
It's just that it just doesn't have the same impact as we would normally have because of how close it is.
Theoretically, Liquid, who are number 11, could be number 1 after like one big tournament win. Maybe not now because they're in NA,
not sure
so
about
they can't
NA.
they can't really play like so. But let's say theoretically they go to Cologne and win Cologne.
You can say complexity. Like if they win another event, they probably could jump from 10 to 1 because they're 200 points off.
Okay. I understand a lot more now because I know I'm very confused with all this ranking stuff. Now, Device, we're going to pivot this a little bit because we have you here. We may as well. Why would we waste this opportunity? In terms of the rankings that HLTV.org have and the way that the teams talk about it or the players talk about it or how even you think about it, like, is this like a driving force to be number one? Do you think it's a good indicator? Like, what's your feelings on it all?
There are definitely situations where I think that so I just had to put the dog down. Where I think that they can be confusing.
Okay.
And there are 90% of the time I think that they are relatively correct. I think that it's a really good goal. It's a goal we've had like for a long time, always maintaining or trying to maintain the number one spot, getting back to the number one spot. That's always been the goal of Astralis, right? So it's easy to set the goal because, as you say, it's so much related to the tournaments that are happening right now, and you can just win a tournament, and if you're dominating, then you're gonna stay at the top for a while, and yeah, I think it's a good way to having and maintaining goals as a team. If you want to be top 5, if you want to, the top 10 is maybe a little bit hard because then there are all the qualifiers, and maybe you don't get invited to all the tournaments. And breaking into the top 20 is the same thing because you don't get any points almost for playing against the lower tier teams, right? So in the top 10, in the top 5, I think it's a good representative for the teams. But maybe going further down, sometimes at least the team can fall down really quickly, which is also something you are going to see with us because we're not going to play in the summit. We've not been playing at the last playoffs, and so.
And you also change players, so that also allows you a lot of points.
Exactly. So, of course, sometimes you have to take it with a grain of salt and like have some perspective, but most of the time it's really effective and a good tool for teams to use.
Okay, I won't ask the obvious question of do you think this is the best ranking out of all the rankings, because I think we probably all know the answer to that one right there.
Yeah.
So do we have anything else we want to really get stuck in with the rankings, guys? You want to keep it moving?
We have like 15 minutes. What do we have left?
We got the RMR stuff, which is on right now.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Like, other than that,
sure.
We kind of touched on the results, which are just transferred into the rankings more or less.
Okay,
yep.
so quickly, for those who aren't too familiar with what the whole RMR or CS Summit event is all about right now, obviously the majors, everything's been fucked on up. We need to come up with a way of doing this online. This format is much different from the first one, and I actually want to kind of just quickly get in here. The reason that I believe that the first format that we had, the ESL run in the Road to Rio, was so large and comprehensive was because if you were going to start a ranking, you would want the largest sample size that we could possibly have of teams playing each other as much as possible. Now, in terms of the climate of where that fit in, with Pro League right before it, DreamHack right after it, Blast following that, that's obviously shit because teams are tired, fatigued, etc. Planning your peak, all those things aren't great. But the idea, I don't think we can fault that idea too much, because I understand it from that perspective of if we have a lot of games, a lot of teams, we should be able to see where everybody matches on up. So now that I got that out of the way, looking at the qualifiers so far, there's already been some results today. Are Dignitas out already?
Yep.
Jesus Christ.
Dignitas and Mad Lions.
Okay.
Mad Lions as well?
Yeah, they went out to Pact.
They lost to Pact?
Yep.
And they didn't play the
Dignitas
last
lost to
qualifier,
FaZe.
so they're basically out, right?
I don't think they're out. I think they still. I mean, you could still win the next event, and have 2,500 points, which is probably still enough to be like in the top.
For
11.
sure, but you have to think about.
You have to be very high, and obviously it has to also depend on the other teams how they do, and like you could be left out even if you win the next event. I think there's a chance of that happening.
Do you know if they're still gonna have regional qualifiers when everything opens up, or are they gonna?
I'm pretty sure this year is gonna finish out this way, just because it's just how it started, right? So it just doesn't make sense to suddenly break it up for the last tournament.
Yeah, the problem would be like, I don't know, like let's say someone won the first Australian event, and then they have to play against like Fnatic and Astralis in the next one. It would be like completely fucked.
The system wouldn't work at all.
Yeah. With that, if there is an opportunity, I would assume that the TOs, if things start to open back up, maybe they could run the last RMR events on LAN.
Yeah,
obviously still regionally, but at least that's one step in a better direction right there.
Look, it's unlikely anyway that we would have anything global happening in that time, right? In like
Yeah.
the next 3 months that it needs to happen. So there's always going to be like limitations. Not always, but like in the current situation, there's going to be a limitation put on certain teams, no matter what you do. So I think it just
maybe
makes
also
sense.
some players you have to respect, like maybe some players actually have health issues or in a high risk zone. So
That's
maybe
true.
some people are actually not like available to travel at all.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't know if that's the case for any teams, but it could be an issue that you have to consider as well.
Can I just quickly dial back, guys, before we jump into today's results too much? Because I wouldn't mind asking Device what he feels about this. Now, we've had a lot of conversations on this panel in the past about, majors, and is the system, a good system for deciding which teams should go to the majors, the legend slots, all those bits and pieces. When you guys obviously had the discussion and you saw this RMR stuff come out, what did you guys like think about it? Like, what did you think about the system that they had put in place?
I think the initial thought is you are maybe a little bit spoiled, right? Because we've been at the legend stage almost every time. So we were kind of used to just playing the major. But I think the system is better. I think that there's just a huge drop off in some teams' performance that, like, if you're guaranteed who are like lost in the quarterfinals, you would automatically be there for the next tournament. It's just a weird system, and maybe it's a little bit biased, but like I would like to see in the future that the recurring winners are kind of like invited, like they do with a lot of tournaments. So especially like if a team has won IM Sydney, they are guaranteed an invite next year. That's something that is pretty cool. So you have the chance to defend your championship no matter what, if you have a little bit of a drop off or whatever. But I think this is the best system to get the best teams for sure. Maybe they're gonna try to adjust it to make it better in the future, but this is the right step at getting the best teams for the major.
What do you think about the penalties for the roster, like the player changes and all of that? Like, because that was when they announced everything, of course, it was hard to go into the rules and actually see how everything would play out. But then when we saw actually the player changes coming in, it seems like it's a lot of points being lost. But in the end, like, everyone is losing a lot of points, so it doesn't really make that big of a difference. Like, everyone's minus 20, 20% or something by now.
I think there needs to be a penalization system, but I think that to have this work correctly, you also need to have a calendar that works so that teams can actually schedule around this, and that's just, of course, impossible right now, but that is, in my opinion, the ideal situation. So you maybe have a transfer window between some of the tournaments and stuff like that. That would probably be good. The penalization, I don't know, 20% is a lot, and as for our sake, like I'm pretty sure Summit probably have liked us to play the tournament, but us not ending up showing up is also kind of bad for our sponsors, probably maybe a little bit for their sponsors, and like you want the teams to play, so the penalty can't be too high. But I think our case is also very unique and not something you will see that often, right? So
it's kind of curious. I'm not sure if you've checked this with Valve or anything, that even if you brought the players back, like, you don't gain back the lost points, right?
Nope, you don't.
So you basically get screwed twice just because
Yeah,
like you slot in two
exactly.
players and then just kick them
we
out
would
again.
lose 80%, right?
That's sick. Ouch.
Yeah, that's
Well, not 80, but like
well,
40,
Yeah.
40 of the
Yeah,
first 100 and then 40 of the rest.
scaling.
Yeah.
Strike
Like
it.
64 or whatever.
We were having a private conversation the other day in our chat. Do you want to tell everybody about
About
What
Navi,
do you-
right?
well, it wasn't about Navi,
Navi.
in particular. It was about how this system could be.
right.
Strikers
Do we
idea.
want to leave that? Sorry, yeah, strike. Do we want to leave it, or do we want to tell everybody? I don't know.
It's definitely something that we could talk about, right? So imagine at the end of the last RMR event, you have, let's say, 2,000 points, and you're just below, like the spot below where you would get to a major. You just miss out on the major, right? But theoretically, you could buy out a player from
Exactly,
the team above for them to lose 20% of points, so you can jump above them, right? So technically, like, you could buy a spot at the major if you had either enough money or if you were just outside of the cut, and you could force like a player change in the team above you. I don't know how it works contractually. Obviously, like, certain teams can just block lineup changes completely and stuff like that. It depends on how your contracts are set up and stuff like that. But I'm sure you could find like a
There's probably a
situation where it's
loophole, yeah.
possible. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's like a problem that I would have with this rule, where like a team could actually force their way into a major this way.
It could be like literally it could be like Nemiga and Navi finishing below them, like, and this is maybe a team that doesn't have like good contracts or something. You can just steal away a player. Like there are a lot of things that can happen. Force the player to bench himself, whatever, and you don't even add him because you don't want to lose 20%. But for that major, you use the 5, you jump over them because they lose 20% of the points, and you're at the major. Right?
And it wouldn't even have to be like a completely like non-org, like an I assume an Amiga. I don't actually know what kind of org they are, if they're actually getting paid decent money or not. But like to an org like Navi, a spot at the major is, I'm sure, worth more, at least like $100,000. Like it's a decent amount that you'd pay to get into a major if you could, theoretically.
But probably we worth more, and I think that
exactly.
It also. I know previously, if you just played a qualifier for the minor or a minor, you would not be able to participate in another team. And I'm not sure if they removed that rule, because that could be.
I think that's been changed. I think you can go from a minor to a. I don't remember right now, but I think that's been changed since.
Yeah, because we had the situation where we couldn't play with Kava, we had Glaive as a
but that was a
substitute.
while ago. I think that's changed in the meantime. That like at least the qualifier into a major, you can play that. I think even from the minor now, but I'm not 100% on that right now.
Boys, I want to. We have about 8 minutes left, right? And we probably, well, we're not probably. I was going to say we're probably never going to have Device again. Maybe he'll come back. Maybe he's enjoyed his time. But
if you want me,
we're very blessed to have you on the show, mate. Some of the answers you've given this evening are absolutely phenomenal, blown me away. But what I would like to do right now, unless you guys want to talk any more about the CS Summit stuff, we have the show next week. I think we're doing. Do we just want to go to playtime? We don't have to run the fucking bumper. Do we just want to have a chat here with Device about any questions, or see if there's anything that we want to pick his brain about?
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah. Okay. Let's do that. Don't play the bumper. We'll pretend the bumper's played. We won't waste any time with that shit. Striker or Prof, off the top of your head, do you have anything, like any direction, any question, anything Counter-Strike related that you want to kick this off with?
There was something that I wanted to ask at the start, but it was just so off topic that it didn't really make sense.
Okay.
Which is just that obviously until you change those 2 players, right? You still won the online event.
Yeah.
And in general, I don't think you've really failed online events before. I think you've been just as consistent there as anywhere else. At least not off the top of my head. I don't remember a result where you just got blown out at an online event, and that seems to me like such an outlier. Nobody else is this consistent, like, period. But obviously online it's even more exaggerated. Why do you think that is?
I think we've worked a lot on like setting ourselves up for games at online tournaments and treating them as like a LAN game, right? So what we want to do is we want to create the same preparation. Damn dog. We create the same preparation, and I think that maybe, as you say, like some of the other teams are actually slacking a little bit online, so that's also something you can use in your favor. I think the most important aspect is probably just like respecting your opponent no matter what, preparing for your opponent, and like the underdog teams that are winning these games. I can't guarantee you this, but I know a lot of the teams are not preparing the same way as they would for a quarterfinal or for a semifinal. But you have to do that because these teams are not used to being anti-strategy against. So they don't know how it is to be nade stacked every round. They don't know how it is to be not able to run your normal defaults, or like you have a guy on your team that dies every round because you have information that they don't know. So I think that's key, and into winning against the underdog teams, you really have to be good at abusing that.
Okay.
Dude, I'm looking at your like online past, and it's just so ridiculous. Like dating back, like I'm looking just before DreamHack Masters, right? Like just before you change the players, it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 out of the last 9 online events you won.
That's crazy, actually. I didn't even know that.
There's like there's the like one qualifier in there, but like
that
other
must
than that,
be
it's
a
actually
record.
normal. Yeah, it's like ECS season 5. Well, ECS season 5 Europe, ECS season 6 Europe, Pro League season 8 Europe, ECS season 7 Europe week 1, then week 4. Then you had the 3rd place at Pro League season 11, and then the 1st place at Road to Rio. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of 7 wins.
We had a league, one of the ECS seasons, where we were unbeaten, We had one game left, and we played against LDLC, and we lost. And I know that nobody has gone undefeated through an online tournament, or
Okay.
so we really wanted that win, and I still remember that one. That's from 2018. That was a tough loss, even though it was online. So you have to respect the losses and the games in the same way, for sure.
Okay.
This is actually a good question that we can ask following up to that, because there's obviously been a lot of discussion about LAN and online right now. Certain teams put a lot of stock in. How much stock do you now no one's disputing that LAN is not the purest form, right? I think everybody is well aware of that, but how much stock do you put into teams using that as an excuse for them not to perform?
I mean, it's never an excuse. I think that's I wouldn't say ridiculous, but it's just a kind of a slack mentality. You have to have a grind mentality, right? You have to always work your hardest, and having that thought in your head, no matter if it's maybe there just once a day, or maybe if it's there after you've lost every time, like it creates a bad pattern. And I think that you can't really use the excuse. You just have to play with the circumstances you have. And of course, some teams will maybe thrive in the environment, and some teams will maybe have a harder time, but there's nothing you can do about that. Just play the game, and especially after you've lost, like if you don't have any constructive things to say on Twitter, and if it's just, oh, we were just unlucky, it's online, then I mean, like it just in my opinion, it just looks weird from the outside perspective. You have to take responsibility, and especially towards your teammates as well, because otherwise then the whole atmosphere in the team will just be like, we're just playing online, like we could have just had a break, and it's not worth the fatigue that the players are under. So that's just my opinion.
Okay, I like
There
that
was
one.
a question on Instagram, and it was just framed in a funny way, and it's also a question we kind of have to ask. It was like, when will Zipnix and Glaive return? They will return, right? And then 5 dots. So it was very, very, very concerned. So what can you say about that?
Glaive's return is planned for August. Zip's return is not planned. That's all I can say. I don't know when in August Glaive will return, but it's in August, and I don't think we have a certain date on Zip. It's hard sometimes with these situations, right? Because a date can also put even more stress on the matter. You actually want to handle the situation and then slowly put people into things again. For my own point of view, I kind of got thrown into things again, and it's a issue you have to be really careful with, because you can pressure people too hard again, and you will have an even harder time coming back, right? So August this year, not next year, not anything like that, you know.
August 2030.
Yeah, exactly. No, August this year. So that's the plan for Glaive, and Zip hopefully as soon as possible. My thoughts are with him all the time, man. I wish him the best. He's one of my best friends.
Okay, that's that, boys. I don't know if you're happy with that. Are we happy to leave it? That's quite a nice note to close the show.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, well, once again, thank you for joining us for HLTV Confirmed. This has been episode number 22. Once again, Device, thank you. That was great.
Thank you so
it was
much.
fantastic to have you on. Great to pick your brain and great to hear some insights on bits and pieces. Now, if you are just an audio only listener, well, you know where to find the podcast, but you can head over to anchor.fm/HLTV. I can actually tell you right now, we will be doing another show next Monday, unless Lucas decides he doesn't want to. I think we discussed that we're going to do a show next Monday, and then the Monday following when the player break starts. And then after that, we might take a little bit of time off because there's probably not too much Counter-Strike news. So that's just for all the viewers out there. We'll try and work on some guests, discussion about potentially doing another Game Changer episode. Yeah, that's been the show. We've covered a lot of topics here today. Thank you for tuning on in. And I don't have any fun life advice to leave with you guys this time around. Just be kind to yourself. I think that's where we'll leave it. So good night.